Suspect's been arrested tonight. Police say he is one of the victim's sons. 21-year-old Javonte Morris has been charged with shooting his mother and her boyfriend Saturday night. Court records indicate Morris lived with the victims at an apartment on Jackson Court. A young child at home at the time and reportedly identified Morris as the gunman. The child was not harmed.
It was loud. My window is over there. It was loud. It was loud. I heard screams.
She was a good lady. She was real sweet.
On the evening of December 27th, 2025, dispatchers in Richton Park, Illinois received a frantic 911 call. A woman's cousin was on the line, terrified, because she'd just heard something no one should ever have to hear through a phone. Threats, the unmistakable sound of a firearm being readied, and then silence. Minutes later, another call came in. This time it was a young man, calm, almost detached, reporting a shooting at his own home. When officers arrived at the apartment complex on Jackson Court, they found two people lifeless inside, a 4-year-old child hiding under a table near her toys, and a suspect who'd stayed on the phone with 911 until police took him into custody. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was a son who allegedly took the lives of his own mother and her boyfriend after she told him he had to leave her home. If you're already hooked and want to dive deeper into real stories like this that demand justice and answers, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now, subscribe to She's Alive, and smash that bell icon so you never miss an update. Because when we let these cases fade into the background, the victims' voices get lost, and that's something we can't let happen. Let's keep their stories alive together. Nivia Phillips was 38 years old, a mother trying to navigate life in Richton Park, a quiet village just south of Chicago. Neighbors knew her as a sweet woman, the kind who'd greet you with a smile and never cause trouble. She had a son, Javonte Morris, who was 21 and still living with her. Nivia also had a relationship with Marcus Jones, a 45-year-old father of two who stayed at her apartment from time to time. Marcus was described by his family as a loving dad, someone who cared deeply about his kids. By all accounts, Nivia and Marcus were just regular people trying to get by, but inside that apartment, tensions had been building for days. Javonte Morris wasn't just Nivia's son. He was also a father himself. His 4-year-old daughter would sometimes stay with him at his mother's place, playing with her toys, probably thinking her grandmother's apartment was a safe place to be. But in late December 2025, that sense of safety started to crumble. Nivia had made a decision, one that a lot of parents eventually have to make when their adult children aren't pulling their weight or respecting boundaries. She told Javonte she wanted him out. She was going to evict her own son from her home. For some people, that kind of ultimatum is a wake-up call. For Javonte, according to prosecutors, it became a breaking point. On Friday, December 26th, the day after Christmas, Marcus Jones started sending text messages to Nivia's cousin. He was worried. Javonte had been making threats against his mother's life, saying things that made Marcus genuinely afraid for Nivia's safety. Marcus told the cousin that Javonte was talking about hurting Nivia, using street language that left no room for misinterpretation. Nivia herself reached out to her cousin that same evening, frustrated and scared. She told her cousin she was going to put Javonte out of the house. Her cousin advised her to call the police, but Nivia didn't. Maybe she thought it wouldn't escalate. Maybe she hoped her son would calm down. Whatever the reason, she didn't make that call. Not yet. The next morning, Saturday, December 27th, Nivia texted her cousin again. This time, the message was more urgent. Javonte was talking about shooting her. Later that afternoon, Nivia's cousin was on the phone with her, probably trying to talk her through the situation, maybe urging her again to get help. But while they were talking, something terrifying happened. The cousin heard Javonte's voice in the background, threatening his mother's life. Then came a sound that would haunt anyone, the unmistakable rack of a firearm being loaded. Javonte allegedly said that if police showed up, there would be a shootout. Think about that for a second. This wasn't just anger or empty threats anymore. This was a man arming himself and making it clear he was ready for violence. The cousin immediately called 911 at around 6:35 in the evening. Police were dispatched within a minute, racing toward the apartment on Jackson Court. But here's where it gets even more chilling. At 6:37, just 2 minutes after the cousin's call, another 911 call came in. This time it was Javonte himself, reporting a shooting at his home. He didn't tell dispatchers he was the one who pulled the trigger. He just stayed on the line, calm, waiting. When officers arrived at 6:43, they found Javonte outside, still on the phone with emergency services. He didn't run. He didn't resist. He just waited to be arrested, like he knew exactly what was coming next. Inside the apartment, the scene was devastating. Nivia Phillips and Marcus Jones were both lying unresponsive, both having suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Paramedics from the Richton Park Fire Department arrived and quickly determined there was nothing they could do. Both victims were pronounced gone at 8:40 in the evening. Investigators found 5 shell casings in one of the bedrooms, evidence of just how violent those final moments had been. But the most heartbreaking discovery was yet to come. Officers found Javonte's 4-year-old daughter hiding under a table near her toy boxes, physically unharmed but absolutely traumatized. Can you even imagine what that little girl witnessed? She was right there when her father allegedly took the lives of her grandmother and Marcus Jones, the man who'd been a presence in her young life. She was later released to another parent at the police station, safe but forever changed by what she'd seen. Now let's talk about the investigation, because this is where everything starts coming together. Richton Park detectives were called in immediately, and they didn't waste time. They knew they had a suspect in custody, but they needed evidence, they needed witnesses, they needed to build a case that would hold up in court. The Illinois State Police were brought in to process the apartment and collect evidence. They recovered a firearm, a .380 Smith & Wesson bodyguard, from the living room. That gun, along with those 5 shell casings, would become crucial pieces of evidence. Detectives also interviewed Javonte's daughter, and what she told them was both heartbreaking and damning. She said her father and grandmother had been yelling at each other because Nivia was going to kick Javonte out of the house. Then, according to the child, her father shot both Nivia and Marcus. The Cook County State's Attorney's Felony Review Unit was notified and began reviewing the case. They had the physical evidence, they had witness statements, they had the timeline, and they had the suspect's own daughter describing what happened. By Tuesday, December 29th, just 2 days after the shooting, formal charges were approved. Javonte Morris was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He was processed at the Richton Park Police Department and then transported to Cook County Jail, where he's been held ever since. What do you think was going through his mind during those 48 hours between the shooting and the charges? Was there remorse? Denial? Or had he already accepted what he'd done? The legal proceedings moved forward quickly. Javonte Morris appeared before a judge who ordered him detained while awaiting trial. There was no bail, no chance of going home. He's currently sitting in Cook County Jail, and his next court hearing is scheduled for January 21st, 2026, just a few weeks away at the courthouse in Markham. That hearing will determine the next steps in his prosecution, and given the severity of the charges and the evidence against him, prosecutors are likely pushing for the maximum penalties. First-degree murder in Illinois carries serious consequences, and with 2 victims, the case against Javonte looks overwhelming. We're talking about premeditation here, about threats made over multiple days, about a man who allegedly armed himself and followed through on those threats in front of his own child. But let's step back and talk about the people left behind, because that's what really matters in cases like this. Marcus Jones' family is mourning a father of 2, a man they described as loving and devoted to his children. Those kids now have to grow up without their dad. And for what? Because he was dating a woman whose son couldn't handle being told to leave? Nivia Phillips' family is shattered. Her cousin, who tried desperately to help, who heard those threats over the phone and called 911, now has to live with the what-ifs. What if Nivia had called police sooner? What if she'd gotten a restraining order? What if Javonte had been removed from that apartment before things escalated? And then there's Javonte's daughter, a 4-year-old who will carry this trauma for the rest of her life. She lost her grandmother, she witnessed extreme violence, and her father is now facing life in prison. How do you explain that to a child? How does she ever process what she saw? The community in Richton Park is still reeling. Neighbors who heard the screams that night, who saw the police lights and crime scene tape, are left wondering how something like this could happen in their quiet village. One neighbor told reporters it was loud, that they heard screams, that they couldn't believe what had unfolded just doors away. Another neighbor who knew Nivia talked about how sweet she was, how she never caused problems.
People shouldn't go about killing people no matter what. No matter what. People shouldn't take lives. It was loud.
It was loud.
My window is over there. It was
really
loud.
loud.
It was loud. I heard screams. I heard screams.
She was a good lady. She was real sweet.
I don't know what to say. 2 people killed, seriously? May their souls rest in peace.
The Richton Park Police Department issued a formal statement expressing condolences to everyone affected by this tragedy and thanking the various agencies that helped with the investigation. But statements don't bring people back. Condolences don't erase what happened. So here's what we need to think about. What drives someone to cross that line? Javonte Morris allegedly threatened his mother for days, armed himself, and then carried out those threats when she insisted he leave her home. Was it entitlement? Was it rage at being held accountable? Was there something deeper going on, some mental health crisis or substance issue that no one addressed in time? And here's another question for you. How do we as a society prevent situations like this from escalating? Nivia's cousin advised her to call police. Marcus was texting warnings. The signs were there. But when family dynamics are involved, when it's a parent dealing with their adult child, the decision to involve law enforcement isn't always straightforward. People hesitate. They hope things will calm down. They don't want to see their loved one arrested. But in this case, that hesitation may have cost 2 people their lives. If this case has affected you, if you're sitting there thinking about the victims or that little girl, or even about how we can do better as a community, I want you to do something. Share this video. Get the conversation started. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I want to hear what you think. What could have been done differently? How do we protect people in situations like this? And if you haven't already subscribed to She's Alive, do it now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because we're going to keep covering cases that matter, cases that need attention, cases where justice needs to be served. Javonte Morris' trial is coming up, and we'll be following every development. Don't let this story fade away. These victims deserve to be remembered, and that little girl deserves a world where something like this never happens again. Stay with us, keep the conversation going, and let's make sure their voices are heard.